Well, sometimes the title is appropriate. Let's talk about it. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Movie Emporium's movie review of My Old Ass, the newest film from director Megan Park. Okay, so it's not every day that you get to say a movie title like My Old Ass, which is a fun title. I gotta admit, it's a title that I wasn't expecting to ever have to say for a review. But this movie, My Old Ass, is about a young woman named Elliot, who's played by Maisy Stella, who is in essence a young woman getting ready to go off to college. She's experimenting. She is basically just a young woman at this point, and she has two friends, and they end up tripping one night on drugs. So what ends up happening? Elliot's character ends up seeing her older self, played by Aubrey Plaza. So with that said, Aubrey Plaza warns her about a guy named Chad, who's played by Percy Hynes White, and says, "Do not fall in love with him." Well, young people do crazy things. They experiment, they go to school, they become human beings in the adult sense. And she kind of starts falling for this character named Chad, who he basically works on the farm that her family runs. So it ends up being a story about the mistakes that we end up making, but how we improve upon ourselves on the mistakes that we make, and how being young is trials and tribulations in a lot of respects, and how we use those to expand about who we are as we grow older. But it's also a sci-fi concept, so the idea of an older version of yourself coming back to talk to yourself is very much in the, that kind of vein of like crazy ideas in a lot of respects, very high concept in a lot of aspects and stuff like that. But it's also a very low-key movie with just an individual who's trying to go through life in a lot of respects. That's kind of the premise of this movie. So with that said, I heard about this movie at Sundance. I really wanted to see it. I've wanted to see it for quite a while now, and it's one of those movies that's garnered a pretty nice buzz for audience, crowds and stuff like that. It's garnered pretty much praise across the board for Megan Park's directing, for Maisy Stella, for Aubrey Plaza, all that good stuff. So I was really looking forward to it. It's finally releasing. It actually was part of the mystery movies series that AMC and Regal and Cinemark do. So I was pretty happy that this was a movie because I wasn't sure what it was going to be. So with this movie finally releasing in theaters and finally getting its exposure, how does this movie fare? What is my honest review of it? And I don't think this movie is as good as everybody's saying it is, but I think this is a very sweet, very kind of melancholy movie on the aspects of a woman who's trying to find herself in a place, in a world that she may not want to be around. Her family is very much a typical family. They love each other. They hang around and eat dinner together. They do their things. They work, at the farm that they work at, and they play golf. And it's just a typical, atypical family. But it's also atypical in the simple fact that she just kind of wants to move on. She wants to be herself. She wants to do things as young adults and young teens do. So therefore, it's a truly honest portrayal of that particular scenario. And on top of everything, it's giving this concept of like, what would happen if our older self was able to come back and warn us. And I really appreciate that honesty and that ability to just kind of go there, just be a very simple film, but with an interesting kind of sci-fi premise. And it's a very small film. It doesn't have a lot to go for. It just kind of time capsule for a person moving into adulthood. And I really appreciate just kind of the small nature of it. Is it like my favorite movie of the year? No, but it has a lot of great performances. I think Maisy Stella does an absolutely phenomenal job as this individual who's going through these trials and tribulations. I think Aubrey Plaza is, she's very self-deprecating, a lot of stuff she does, but she's also very talented and she's very funny, and she can do that very kind of not smiling, but also be making jokes that are actually quite humorous. And I think they both do a nice job of playing off one another. Do they look like each other? Not really. But the idea of like, do we really look like our younger self? And yes and no in a lot of respects. So it's not really the most difficult, hard thing to realize. It's just going in that Maisy Stella and Aubrey Plaza don't look like each other, but they play well off each other of playing a younger or older version of each other. But it also just has a nice romantic story. Chad, who's just this very, atypical guy, just comes into the mix and she just kind of falls for it. Yes, she has a relationship with a woman and stuff like that, but her story is just more about just her exploration about why does this older version of herself keep telling her not to be with Chad? Why does she, why does she keep saying this? Why won't she give any reasons? And there's that whole time paradox thing where if you tell them, it could cause a ripple effect, which could cause a lot of problems. So I kind of get why, Aubrey Plaza's character wouldn't want to say anything, but it's just, in the end, like, that's kind of the story you're running. Like the mother, who's played by Maria Dizzia, does a fantastic job of just being a really relatable mother. I think the father doesn't really have a lot to do in to be fairly honest. I think the brothers are much more interesting. Her older brother is more into golf, and like as older Elliot tells her to kind of spend more time with the family, you start to see the kind of the connections and the realization that once you move out and once you go off onto your own, things will never be like they are at this particular moment of your life. So it's like saying you can't go home again. So that's what this movie does really, really well. And I think this is a very personal story to Megan. It feels like a very personal story to Megan Park, and something maybe she had gone through with like her family and maybe a boyfriend that, had a particular scenario. It really feels like an authentically earnest story of something like that Megan Park went through. But that's kind of where the story lies. There's not much else to talk about outside of the fact that I don't understand why people go to these mystery movies to begin with, because if they spend the $10 or whatever, they go as a couple and they see a movie like this and they walk out, it's just like you kind of just have to go with it. It's the kind of type of thing where you don't know what you're going to watch, and that's kind of the honest kind of cool thing about these movies, because sometimes these will be movies that you don't see if you're not into this type of scenario. But I really like the fact that I was able to see this movie. I didn't know I was going to see this movie, but I finally got to see it. I really enjoyed it. I think it's a very nice looking movie. It's a very calm looking movie. It has drama, but it doesn't go very hard or very deep. It's just a personal story of a young woman approaching the adult stages of her life, and how does that affect her when she comes to realize that there are certain things that are more important than what the young person realizes. And there's also ideas that older Elliot goes through that are much more interesting, in the simple fact of like, are the things you're learning from your youth really the perfect thing to kind of contempt yourself on? And it's a really kind of, once again, earnest story with a lot of fun, entertaining, vulgar language and sexual scenarios, and it's a humanistic story in a lot of respects. So in the end, I recommend this movie. It's not for everyone, but once again, it's a very simple movie that I think it's very well done, very well put together. So with that said, that is going to be my take on My Old Ass. Thank you so much for watching. As always, in the comments below, tell me what you thought of this movie, if you saw it during the mystery movie or if you saw it during Sundance. Let me know what you think overall, that other good stuff. But otherwise, if you like what you see on this channel, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell top to find what's coming next. If you like this video, awesome. Hit that like button. And as always, we'll see you guys on the next video. Peace out, guys.